this is how it ends. Not with screaming, not with some explosive Hollywood scandal caught on camera, but with silence so loud it practically echoes. Blake Lively, the woman who once looked like she had the perfect life stitched together in designer fabric and red carpet smiles, is suddenly standing in the middle of something that feels empty. And Ryan Reynolds, the man who built an entire persona around being the devoted, witty, ride-or-die husband, he didn't slam a door. He didn't make a scene. He just disappeared, quietly, strategically, almost like he had been planning this exit long before anyone noticed the cracks. Because if you rewind this story, really rewind it, you start to see that nothing about this collapse was sudden. It was slow, creeping, almost surgical in how it unfolded. It all starts with that film. It ends with Us, a project that looked innocent on the surface, but somehow turned into a pressure cooker behind the scenes. Blake steps into the role, paired with Justin Baldoni, who wasn't just her co-star, but also the director, the man who had been holding on to this story for years. And from the very beginning, something felt off. Not obvious, not dramatic, just off. Fans started whispering, criticism started building, not just about the casting, but about Blake herself, her look, her tone, her presence. Small comments at first, then louder, then relentless. And that's where things started to twist. Because pressure like that doesn't stay online. It seeps into real life, into conversations, into glances on set, into energy that no one can quite explain but everyone can feel. By the time promotion for the film began, the distance between Blake and Justin wasn't just noticeable, it was impossible to ignore. No shared interviews, no side-by-side appearances, no warmth. Just this cold, calculated separation that had people asking, what happened? What went wrong? Then the bomb drops. Blake files a legal complaint. Suddenly, this isn't just awkward tension anymore, it's war. She claims harassment. He denies everything. Not quietly, either loudly, aggressively, publicly. Lawsuits start flying. Accusations stack up. And what was supposed to be a movie release turns into a battlefield, with reputations hanging in the balance. But here's where it gets even messier, because while all of this is exploding behind the scenes, the public narrative is spiraling in a completely different direction. Blake is out there promoting the film, but people aren't hearing what she's saying, they're dissecting how she's saying it. The floral outfits, the light tone, the way she talks about a story rooted in domestic violence like it's something softer, something easier to digest. And the internet? It doesn't forgive that kind of disconnect. It turns. Fast. Suddenly, she's not just misunderstood, she's being labeled, criticized, torn apart piece by piece. Meanwhile, Justin is doing the exact opposite. Serious posts, resources for survivors, a tone that feels aligned with the gravity of the story. And just like that, the contrast becomes the narrative. He's doing it right, she's doing it wrong. And once that narrative locks in, it doesn't matter what the truth is anymore, it's already decided. And through all of this chaos, Ryan Reynolds is there, or at least he appears to be, standing beside her, supporting her, playing the role he's always played. But here's the question nobody asked at the time: how long can someone keep playing a role before it starts breaking them too? Because support isn't just public appearances and clever tweets, it's emotional weight. It's constant decision-making. What do you say? What do you stay silent about? How much do you defend before it starts costing you something? And if you look closely, really closely, you can see the shift. Subtle at first, almost invisible, but it's there. The energy changes. The presence fades just a little. The certainty starts to wobble. And maybe that's the real beginning of the end. Not the lawsuit, not the backlash, but the moment Ryan stopped being fully there, even if no one noticed yet. Because relationships don't collapse in one dramatic moment. They erode, quietly, gradually, until one day, the person who was always standing beside you just isn't anymore. And the scary part? By the time you realize it, it's already too late. And then, the clues stop being subtle. They stop whispering. They start screaming if you're paying attention. Because this is the part where everything that once felt like coincidence suddenly lines up a little too perfectly, a little too cleanly, like pieces of a puzzle nobody wanted to solve out loud. It starts with that phone call, not a press statement, not a paparazzi shot. A random voice calling into a podcast claiming something so oddly specific it almost sounds made up until you realize how much sense it actually makes. A paralegal, a building in New York, the 11th floor, a freight elevator, and Ryan Reynolds stepping out, surrounded by people who weren't just casually walking with him, they were shielding him, blocking sightlines, creating distance. Moving like this wasn't supposed to be seen. Now ask yourself something simple. If everything at home was fine, why the secrecy? Why the freight elevator instead of the front? Why the entourage forming a human wall? And most importantly, why that floor? Because the 11th floor doesn't just house offices. It houses one of the most well-known divorce lawyers in New York. That's not a coincidence you accidentally walk into. That's a destination. That's intention. And suddenly, the story shifts. This isn't about rumors anymore. This is about decisions that have already been made behind closed doors. Then comes February 11th, a date that should have been unshakable. Blake walking into a settlement conference tied to everything she had been fighting publicly. A moment where you expect solidarity, presence, partnership, and yet the seat next to her is empty, completely empty. No Ryan, no quiet support in the background, no subtle show of unity, just absence. Loud, undeniable absence. And people noticed. Of course they noticed, because when someone who has always shown up suddenly doesn't, that's not scheduling. That's a message. Whether intentional or not, it lands the same way. It says something changed, something broke, something that no one is saying out loud yet. And then, almost like the universe is stacking evidence on top of evidence, comes the detail that no one can ignore once they see it. The ring. That tiny symbolic piece of metal that has represented 14 years of marriage suddenly gone. Not during a casual outing, not hidden in the background, but missing on national television, under bright lights where every detail is captured, replayed, analyzed, and sure, on its own, it could mean nothing. People forget things. Jewelry gets removed. Life happens. But stacked against everything else, the elevator, the lawyer, the empty seat, the growing distance. It stops looking like forgetfulness and starts looking like a pattern, a quiet unraveling happening in real time, hidden in plain sight. Because that's the thing about endings like this. They don't announce themselves. They reveal themselves through fragments, through moments that don't make sense until you line them up side by side. And once you do, you can't unsee it. Every appearance feels different. Every silence feels heavier. Every missing detail feels intentional. And now, everything that once looked like a perfect life starts to feel fragile. 4 children, 4 lives completely tied to 2 people who suddenly may not be standing on the same side anymore. A brand built on humor, on love, on that effortless chemistry people believed in. What happens to that when the foundation cracks? What happens when the jokes stop feeling real? Because this isn't just a breakup. This is an entire ecosystem of life, career, and identity that starts to shift all at once. Homes, deals, public image, private reality. Everything tangled together in a way that makes separation messy, complicated, almost impossible to keep quiet forever. And maybe that's why the silence is still holding, because once it breaks, everything changes. The narrative, the image, the illusion. But here's the part that lingers, the part that doesn't settle, no matter how much you try to rationalize it. Ryan didn't explode. He didn't fight publicly. He didn't defend, didn't clarify, didn't even deny. He just stopped. Stopped showing up the same way. Stopped filling the space he used to occupy so effortlessly. And when someone who was once your loudest supporter becomes silent, that silence says everything. So now we're left here, watching something that feels like it already ended behind the scenes, waiting for the moment the world finally catches up. Waiting for the statement, the confirmation, the official version of a story that already feels written. Because the truth is, this didn't just fall apart overnight. It faded, quietly, strategically, piece by piece. And if you listen closely, beneath all the noise, all the speculation, all the headlines, there's still one question hanging in the air, unanswered and uncomfortable. Was this the moment Ryan walked away? Or was it just the moment we finally noticed?